There's a bit of confusion whether like I'm doing something. No. You see sick kids. I mean, you gotta. Right. I mean, you're saying like we have to care about sick kids. That's what these images are. You just banged on. I could we attempt to say like what this when I said like the private insurers are like they're sort of waging a war like to just get to stop affordable health care one way or the other, to stop it from moving forward, to turn people against it, to get it repealed. They're doing it, and it's like the corporations are doing it. The Republican Party is doing it too, but I don't think it's something that we've got to break through. The Republican to say the Republican Party and the private insurers are working to stop healthcare, affordable healthcare. Part of it, the rhetoric of the see, John Boehner came out and said, "Look, this Tea Party wanted Obamacare repealed. It doesn't work. It's not that was the wrong strategy." He's coming out and acknowledging it's here to stay and it's the wrong strategy. What you're doing to try to get it repealed. But looking forward, I mean, the Republican Party and the health insurers are like gonna one way or another they're gonna stop it from moving forward. You know what I mean? And it'll be I mean, it could be a matter of time, like any of these other things that don't seem likely because you can't imagine it. Like there is a concern with abortion. Like there is a concern that they're going to try eventually get to some strategy to overturn Roe versus Wade. You can't. You think no such thing could happen, but like they making moves all the time. So they're being proactive on it. They are. So it's the same thing. You've got a major forces in the country acting against healthcare. But when you hear the Republicans, they make fun of them all the time for their like ridiculous rhetoric. But it works. And the reason it works is that they do. But I want to say what backs it up. You know, they're afraid. They're afraid of something they call socialism. And they're like I said, they're trying to they're phobic of some kind of statism coming, but that's why the Republican Party, like when they use their rhetoric, it sounds so dumb. But no, they're playing on this fear people have in our population against something they're calling socialism. But the problem is with the internet, part of this like information superhighway, or what's been called by a lot of like theorists like this kind of information bomb, is that like people can look things up. Okay, but see, if you go look up the definition of socialism on Wikipedia, we don't know who's writing that stuff. I don't know. Someone who's academically educated has like contributed that. It's supposed to be kind of democratic and that like anyone can write for it and then they can correct it. But I mean, it's academics. I read it. I mean, it's not. That's not. There is no definition per se. When they use the word, it's used. It's a word that like for no apparent for reasons that are irrational, like terrorizes people. That we might be going to something called socialism, but the thing is, on all the articles, like if you were to look up what it means, I mean, it backs up what this misperception will have is something to do with the government taking over all the industry, or the government involving itself in industry, which would be horrible if they did that. But they're not doing that. But the population is phobic about it, and phobic about something. Statism, the government taking over different kinds of things that are in the private sector, bureaucratic structures taking over one's lives. That's that, but the word they're using is socialism. That's what they mean, though. So, like, when I met that girl who was, like, sort of in your thing, and she was like, well, I lived in Switzerland for a while, and, like, I'm a socialist. Like, I don't think she realized what Americans think that word means. They think it means the government is, in some sense, going to take over our lives, take over industry, bring bureaucratic structures that limit freedom, or something tyrannical, and that kind of phobia to come back from people come back from countries that are enlightened and have healthcare and this and that, and all social classes do well. They come back to, oh, it's great they have socialism over there. That's not what people think. They don't think it's like Switzerland coming. They think it means statism and taking over all the industries by government. So the fact that they use it as a pejorative. That's what they think it means. That's how they're using the word. So the political class on the Republican side, they can just talk all kinds of nonsense, but they know the population's so phobic about it that when Obama announced his healthcare program, something probably unprecedented in modern history, someone came to the front row with a gun holstered to their ankle and a sign that said, "It's time to water the tree of liberty." What did he think was happening? It's something that they're calling socialism. That's not what Europeans mean when they say socialism. They believe it means this. Here we think it means the state taking over everything, like the Soviet Union, and they're also been propagandized that because what Chomsky says is really interesting. He says that when you look at the secret documents that were going on inside the American government and inside Soviet Russia during the Cold War, he said, they don't they're perceiving each other and totally they all have it doesn't go together. What they think, they agreed on nothing. They all thought the other society was doing something that they weren't. And he accurately says the losers, we didn't win the Cold War. The losers in the Cold War were the workers, and the winners were the higher classes in both societies. But he said they agreed on nothing. There was all kinds of paranoia and everything. He said, but there's one thing they both agreed on, both regimes, that Russia is socialist. It wasn't. I mean, that's not. Chomsky says, I don't know what they were doing over there. They didn't have anything to do with socialism. It's an ironclad dictatorship that had the psychotic idea that they're going to push an agrarian society through industrialization in one generation, and it'll be a model. And they're telling the people we're going to socialism, and they're just under a dictatorship. Ironclad development state dictatorship doing something crazy. By taking over all, it was the government would run every sector and be in people's lives in that way. Well, that's not coming, but that's what they fear. They were propagandized against something called socialism, and now they're afraid that any move by the government to do anything to help the people is this thing that they're calling socialism. Not what Europeans mean. They mean the state taking over our lives. That has to be overcome. That psychological, that thought disorder in the population that they've been keeping at them for years to be phobic of something. But it was the same with communism. They used the word communism they were going to Latin America and using death squads to murder labor leaders and priests, and saying on over here that what we're doing is we're fighting communism. That word, they can't use it anymore. People are more enlightened. They've replaced it with socialism. But they're using it to mean the same thing that they meant when they said communism. So that's a problem. That's a problem, and it's a psychological hurdle. And to make fun of Republican antics without realizing that they can say whatever they want, they're playing on what it is the population's phobic of this thing called socialism. That has to be broken through eventually if we're to move to healthcare. This humble person thinks.